So welcome all. Remember we were dealing with the short run. Remember we were dealing, okay, so again. So what we would like to do, because this is basically what we are trying to go. So remember at the very beginning of this class, I promised you that I'm going to explain or you'll learn where this demand curve comes from, right? So what lies behind this demand curve and what lies behind this supply curve, okay? Now remember we did this part and we're almost there, okay, for the supply curve, okay? So now we need to understand how firms decide on, right? So for instance, for a given price level, how much they would like to produce, right? But we know that behind this concept, right, there is this, basically there lies a lot of stuff, right, that we have learned. So we learned there lies the production function, there lies the input costs, right? And we first dealt with the cost minimization problem, and then now we learned about the profit maximization problem, right? But still, we were just there in the previous class, but I haven't shown you how to get the supply curve, okay? But we learned another thing. We said that, well, in order to understand how a firm is behaving, we need to understand basically like the short run, right? So we have to look at the firm when it's the short run, and we have to look at the firm when it's the long run, right? So there is this distinction. So basically, at the end of today's class, we're going to see where this guy comes from, okay? So now this is going to be a check. And then for the rest of this class, what we will do is that we're going to bring these guys together and remember your introductory econ classes. With the with the interaction of demand and supply, what do you get? You get the equilibrium, but what does it give you?
Optimum.
Optimum, okay, but what does that give you?
Market clearing price.
Right, so it's basically, so remember, so I was asking what to ask, right, on the attendance sheet, your friends were telling me, Hocam, what's going to be dollar's value, right? Like, so people should write their guesses. And then I said, that's boring, so let's not do that. But basically, right, so it's, as economists, or like most of the time, people would expect from economists, right, to tell them what's going to be the price, right? What's going to be the price of the dollar? What's going to be the price of an iPhone? What's going to be the price of a house? You know, what would be the price of a house, right, or rent, right? So the questions that they would ask you is most of the time about the price, right? So we know that, so basically the whole idea of trying to understand how consumers behave and the whole idea of trying to understand how firms behave is in the end because we wanted to know what's going to happen to price, okay, in that market. What would be the price in that market, okay? So that's why we're going to bring these guys together. And as I said that in this course, in a perfectly competitive market, in a very simple market structure, which is a little bit too sort of extreme, but we'll talk about that. We're going to bring them together, right, in a market, and then we're going to, right, and we are going to get the price. So now, actually the equilibrium price, as you guys said, okay? So this is what we would do, and then the course would end, okay? So, but now, remember, this is not a check yet. So we need to get this supply portion. Remember what we were doing? Remember the graph that I drew last time? So let me actually draw it again. That's not one of the ugliest ones, right? So we had seen uglier graphs, but let's draw this. So basically here I'm going to put price, if you want, I'm going to put any sort of average costs, marginal costs, right? And then here I'm going to put Q, quantity, okay? And then I'm going to put, let's have this. So this is going to be the short run average cost. And remember the heading was, first we were trying to understand, today we're going to see their long run supply as well. But today, now, remember we were trying to understand here, this was the short-run supply decision of a price-taking firm, okay? So we would like to understand, for instance, let's say Mozart Cafe is a price-taking firm, and then how would they decide on their output? This is what we would like to understand, okay? How would they decide on their queue? So that's our problem in the short run. And then we'll see that it's different for the long run, okay? So let me write down. So this is the short run supply curve, okay? Or let's say short run supply decision, which is going to give us the short run supply curve, okay? By a price taking firm, okay? And remember, what does price taking mean? What does it mean? Price taking means perfect competition, right? By supplying more or by selling more, I cannot affect the price, okay? I'm taking the price as given, whatever the price in the market as given. So this is actually, as your friend was saying, this is a case where we have a perfectly competitive market where firms are actually taking the price level as given, okay? So basically because they're too small, again, this is the typical example. Think of a tomato producer, right? Like, let's say, Ahmet amca, çiftçi Ahmet amca, right? Producing tomatoes. And then because, you know, like you have farms right next to each other, or they go to the farmer's market, right? Pazara gidiyorlar. They go to the farmer's market, and then whatever the price in the farmer's market, they usually, right? So basically they sell it at that price, because if they sell it at a higher price, no one's going to buy from them. If they sell it at a lower price, everyone's going to buy from them, right? So that's why we said that you should think of these goods like firms would be price takers, or we would have a perfectly competitive market where there's not much room for differentiation, okay, for these products. And these guys are small. They're not like, let's say, Migros, right? They're not like Walmart, that they can, you know, like they can affect the market price, okay, by selling more or less. So remember, because it's short run, we put the short run average cost curve, and then we put the short run average variable cost, right? So this is what we put. Hopefully this time we can also draw it. And remember, I drove it like what? So I draw this. It should be getting closer to this guy or getting away from this guy. Closer, right? Because of what we said? Short run average variable cost. These gets closer. Why? I don't get closer here, so don't get confused. Why? Because of the fixed cost, right? So we know that remember, short run total cost was equal to short run fixed cost, but of course it's fixed cost, right? So your fixed cost plus, we said that, right, short run total, or short run total variable cost, or short run variable cost, okay? Because of the fixed cost. This is a fixed number, it doesn't change. And if you get the averages, right, you divide this guy by Q, you divide this guy by Q. So this is going to get smaller and smaller, so these guys converge to each other, okay? As quantity gets higher. Okay, so this is what we said, and then we said that marginal cost would, if I want to draw marginal cost, it should pass through where? The minimums of these guys, right? So, and remember, we know how to prove that some curve goes through the minimum of, you know, other curves, right? So we did many times. We did it for marginal product and average product. We did it for average cost and marginal cost, right? So you can still show it here in a very similar fashion, okay? So basically, this is going to be, so let's actually draw the marginal cost. And then I said that it's going to pass through the minimum of this guy, it's going to pass through the minimum of this guy, okay? So this is short run marginal cost, okay? So this is what we said. And then, remember, so these guys we did, and then we start trying to understand what's going on, right? First, we said that suppose price is, okay, somewhere here. So let's call this P star. So the first case, we said that suppose market clearing prices, the market prices, because the firm is a price taker, will understand how this market price will be determined, as I said later, so we'll see that. But now, suppose the market's price is P star. Then you told me, hocam, the profit maximizing condition is what? If the price is this, what does a firm do? It sets price equals to marginal cost, right? So it sets price equals to marginal cost. So this is going to be the profit maximizing quantity, right, at this price. And then we said that, well, you go up here. This is your short run average cost, right? So this is your total cost. So basically you go here, okay? So this is short run average cost Q star. Basically, what is the cost of producing Q star units of output, right? So then you told me, don't forget, you see that we have this. So basically, so you can say that short run average cost is what? Short run total cost divided by Q, right? So if I multiply, you see that short run total cost is short run average cost times Q, right? So basically, this area that you have, this guy times this guy, so this rectangle here is what? My total cost, right? So what is profit? It's total revenue minus total cost. This is my total revenue, P star times Q star, right? And this is my total cost, short and average cost at Q star times Q star, right? So this area in between is what? The profit, right? You guys told me. And hocam, you told me whether this is positive or not. It's positive, right? We call it, the firm is making positive economic profit, okay? So now this is actually what we said. And then this is positive economic profit. Why? Why it's positive? Because, so let's try to say it in terms of prices and average revenues. So how can we say that? Profit is positive, or we can say that P star is greater than what? Short run, right? Short, because then you're going to multiply both sides by Q, right? It's not going to change anything as long as, you know, like Q is greater than 0, right? So this is going to be P star is greater than the short run average cost Q star, okay? So pi star is positive, right? So you see, this is going to be important, so keep this in your mind, okay? So this is what we said. So we have positive economic profit, and that's how we show it, okay? Now, suppose price is, so let's put it here. Suppose market price is, so suppose market price, okay, is this, P double star. Okay, so I am going to have this guy so that we would have a nice curve. I'm going to have it here. By the way, this P star, right, this, what did we call? This is the market price, but we said also this is what? This is the demand for. So this curve is what? If you're a price taker as a firm, what is the demand curve that you face with? It's perfectly elastic, right? So how do you show a perfectly elastic demand curve? Like this, right? It's going to be perfectly elastic at this P star value. So we call this demand for firm. This is the demand the firm faces. Even though there might be a downward sloping demand in the market, this is the demand that this firm faces, okay? So then we said that also if it's a price taker, this is also what? Equal to, this is what curve? This is equal to, we said that demand is usually the average revenue, and also it is marginal revenue, right? So we said that demand for a firm, we can say P star equals to marginal revenue, and it's equal to average revenue, okay? So just keep this in your mind. Now, we come to this. Suppose market clearing price is this. So I look at here. Again, as you told me that, how can I find the profit maximizing quantity? Price equals to marginal cost, right? So again, this is going to be P double star equals to marginal revenue, average revenue, and this is also demand for firm. Because, right, firm does not face a downward sloping demand curve. They take the price as given, and it's allowed that they can sell as much as they want at P, right? So basically, this is the demand for firm. So this is this. So we go down, and you said that, hocam, this is the profit maximizing quantity, okay? So this is fine. Then how can I show the profit? Again, you said that, hocam, you should go up. So this is the amount that they're going to earn, right? So this is the total revenue, P double star times Q double star. Now, in order to find the total cost in this graph, I have to go up here, okay? And then let's say we have this. Okay, so this is short run average cost Q double star, okay? Then you told me, what is this area? This area that I have, right? This guy times this guy is actually total cost, right? This guy times this guy is total revenue. So what is that area? You told me it's an economic loss, right? So there's no positive, you can say pi, but pi is negative here, right? So here we have, so we're going to need that portion. So here I say pi double star is negative. So we say that the firm is making an economic loss, okay? So let's write this. Here you see, you can say that since P star is less than, P double star is less than short run average cost Q double star, right? We said that pi star double star is negative, right? So we say there is economic loss. So this is different from, so like the loss you probably use in your daily life, okay? So there's a difference. Remember, we talked about cost, right? Total cost, total cost. There's a difference between what we call the accounting cost and the economic cost, okay? As I told you before in our previous class, remember I said that suppose your grandma, so who is the celebrity in this course, right? So like your grandma, she gave you, you and your dad, her flat, right? Her whatever, you know, like an apartment, you know, like a flat, of course. So like, right, so she gave you so that you can use it as an office. So basically in your books, right, because you don't pay anything to your grandma, in your books, and that's why you can think of it as the accounting cost. You know, when people come and check, they're not going to see any amount that you pay to your grandma, right? So it would look as if you're not paying anything to your grandma, right? So that is the accounting cost of that building is going to be basically zero of that flat. Of course, you might pay electricity, you might pay the utility, but let's say your grandma, you know, pays all the utilities as well, okay? The aidatı da anneanneniz ödüyor. So let's say, so, which is nice, right? So like she covers basically everything, but you don't pay her anything, right? So then in the books, because you don't pay these stuff, they won't be recorded as costs, okay? So then you would say that the accounting costs of these are zero. But in economics, we say that the economic cost of that flat, okay, is not zero. Because your grandma could have rented that, you know, like that flat to you or someone else, and she could have made some money, right? So in economics, we see costs as opportunity costs. So what was the best alternative use of that building? And that is the cost. It's not the money that it comes out of your pocket, but what was the best, you know, like alternative use of that, okay? So that's why even though you're making an economic loss, it might not be the case that you're not earning money. It's bad, you know, like to be in that business, at least in the short run, okay? So, so just keep this in your mind. So because there's a difference between accounting costs and economic costs, usually you would be, you know, maybe on paper you would be earning money, but an economist would tell you that you're making an economic loss, okay? So whenever you see that, you think that, okay, this firm is making a loss, but wait a second, they're still operating, so it might not be that bad, okay, because of the cost concept. So as I said that this is economic loss, then remember, what did we say? So here the firm is making a loss. So suppose you and your dad, you have your firm, and then you figured out that you're making, and because you took econ courses, right? You know, you wrote, and you showed that you're making actually a loss. So would you still keep operating? Remember, that's what we said. So what should be the rule? You said that, hocam, if my dad can make some money, right? If I can make some money, I can pay myself, like some wage. If my dad can, I can pay my dad some, like some wage. If I can cover all the costs of that firm, then why shouldn't I be operating at least, tomorrow or in 2 days or for a week, right? At least in the short run. So here the issue, you might say that it's okay that we can still operate, okay? So the rule is this: as long as you can cover your total revenue, you make money to cover your short-run variable costs, right? Which means that you can pay yourself some money, you can pay your dad some money, you can pay your other workers some money, you can pay the electricity, so the heating your grandma pays, right? So you can pay the electricity, you can pay the internet or whatever, like all these operating costs you can cover. The only thing you cannot do is that you cannot pay your grandma, okay? Let's say. So, but we said that as long as your total revenue is greater than your short-run variable costs, in the short run, you would keep operating. But what can you, because you're smart, what could you do in the long run? In the long run, you won't be, if that is the case, because, you can, in the long run, you can always re-optimize, right? You can rent the house to somewhere, let's say, and get the money. Maybe you could find some other place to have your firm inside, right? So you can change. Remember, in the long run, you can also decide on your capital. You can change these kind of stuff, okay? But in the short run, when you cannot change these kind of stuff, so like when you have some sort of a fixed cost and you've already paid for it, let's say, or your grandma, she didn't know, she has given it to you, but then, someone told her that, oh, that's not nice, you should get some money for that, whatever, right? So it's basically, she can, or you and your dad, in the short run, you would, as long as you can cover these guys, right, the short-run variable cost, you would keep operating, but in the long run, if you're making a loss, you would shut down, okay? And if you're making an economic loss, you would shut down, because you can always, as I said, that make sure that you can just rent that place to someone else. Maybe it's the rents are really high. You can just move your firm to some other place, etc. Okay, so all these, remember, you're more flexible in the long run. So this is the rule. As long as you can cover this, you would keep operating. Okay, so keep operating. So but remember, we don't draw these curves with totals, right? We draw them. It's much easier to draw them with the averages. So let's try to write this in terms of, so total revenue is P times Q. Short-run variable cost is short-run average variable cost times Q, right? So now if you divide both sides by Q, this would mean that as long as price is greater than short-run average variable cost, you would keep operating, okay? So as long as this is the case, so your price is greater than your short-run average variable cost, you would keep operating. So here, right? So, sorry, so this is the case, right? So here you see, as long as your price was greater, it was less than your short-run average cost, but remember, it was greater than your short-run average variable cost, right? So remember, this is the cost was here, right? So the average variable cost is here. You see your price was about that, okay? So you keep operating, and if P is less than short-run average variable cost, you would shut down, okay? So this is the rule. Now let's try to understand. So this is, okay, so this is very important. This is the shutdown rule in the short run, okay? So this is, you can call this shut down rule in short run, okay? Because this is going to give us the supply curve, you'll see. So now we're getting there. Now, this we figured out. So you would, as long as my price is above the average variable cost, I would keep operating. As long as my price is below short-run average variable cost, I would shut down. And of course, to be proper, let's put this, right? So let's say you would choose to operate when they're equal, okay? So now, but where does this happen? Where do you think this is going to happen? So remember, the firm should always be profit maximizing, right? So what is the profit maximizing rule? We said price should be equal to marginal cost, okay? And then what do I say? Price should be equal to marginal cost. And I said that price, as long as price is greater than short-run average variable cost, I would keep operating, okay? That's what I said. So don't forget that still the firm is profit maximizing. So still the firm is optimizing, okay? So then what does this mean? It means that, so you're going to, your price would be, you're going to set your price equals to marginal cost, and then you're going to check at that, the quantity, right, which sets your price equals to marginal cost, basically the quantity, you're going to check whether this guy, this price, is greater than this average variable cost at that quantity, right? So what does this mean? How can I write these guys together? I can say, right, so these are two conditions. I know that the firm is going, this means marginal cost should be greater than or equal to short-run average variable cost, okay? Fine. Where does this happen? Where do we have marginal cost greater than short-run average variable cost? In which portions? Right, so when remember all the stuff that we did, so we did them for a purpose. Whenever when marginal cost is above the average cost, let me tell you. Remember we learned marginal cost is above the average costs when? Right, when they, remember, so marginal cost cuts the average costs where? At its minimum, right? And then after minimum, marginal cost is above the average cost, right? So that's what we said. That's why the average is increasing, right? So you see that apparently you are going to produce quantities such that price is, such that marginal cost is above the average variable cost. So where does this happen? So let's see. So which color? I'll do it with blue, okay? So suppose that this is the minimum of, so I go and I write here, minimum short-run average variable cost, okay? And then I call this Q minimum short-run average variable cost, okay? Apparently, the guy is going to produce only quantities that are here, right? Because for quantities that I have here, I know that you see that marginal cost is going to be here, so the price should be equal to marginal cost should be somewhere here, right? And that's going to be below the average variable cost. This is not something that this firm would be operating in, right? So therefore, you see that firm is going to produce these quantities, right? So, or in other words, firm is going to produce at prices which are above this guy, right? So therefore, the firm supply curve is, otherwise it's zero, they're not supplying anything. Firm supply curve is, you see, it's this short-run marginal cost curve. But when price is basically above the minimum of short-run average variable cost, okay? When price is above the short-run average variable cost, the minimum short-run average variable cost, supply curve is equivalent to the short-run marginal cost curve, okay? So you see that this is short-run supply curve. This, but we know that it's not the whole marginal cost curve, right? So when price is less than minimum short-run average variable cost, what is the supply? it is 0, right? The firm is, you just shut down with your dad. So basically, this is, so let me write this and then we'll give a break, okay? So this is going to be, you see, this thick blue curve is your short-run supply curve, okay? It's not, so as I said, remember, so the supply curve, I draw it like this, but apparently in the short run, it also has this interesting portion, okay? Which is this, okay? So let me write this. Did you understand? This is very important, okay? This is how we got the supply curve. So the supply curve of a firm, profit maximizing firm in the short run, and here it's a price taker, is going to be this thick blue curve, okay? So let me write this and then we'll give a break. So, because don't forget that supply curve, to write down the supply, you have to write Q equals to something which is a function of price, okay? So that's why you need to determine with respect to the price. It's going to be a piecewise function, right? And it would be, its cutoffs would be determined with respect to the price, okay? So that's why, let me write this down here. So basically, as I said that, so this is what we figured out, but we know that, so now we can write it in a better way. So let's do this. So this is basically, so we have this. So the short run supply curve of a price taker firm is what? Okay, so this is basically, so we actually write that quantity that they would supply is, you're going to find it, prices, it's going to be exactly equal to the marginal cost curve, right? So we can actually write it for price is greater than minimum short run average variable cost for, well, basically it's 0. Price less than minimum short run average variable cost, it's going to be 0, okay? So you see, this is like a proper supply curve, right? So let's call this, let's say QS, which is a function of price, right? So a supply curve, we should write it as a function of price. That's why I wrote it like this. But of course, you can also, the other one that we have written is also valid. So let me write it down again. Shutdown rule is what? If apparently price is greater than the minimum short run average variable cost, then we said keep operating. Okay? And then if price is less than minimum short run average variable cost, then shut down. Okay? So sometimes this is called, that's why this Q level is called Q shutdown. Okay? Because it's called the shutdown level, and sometimes this is called the shutdown price. Okay? Price shutdown. Okay, so that's why these guys are considered like that. But you see, you understood the logic, right? So you understood the difference between what we mean by economic cost. You understood the difference between the short run, right? Because and the accounting cost, right? So the difference between short run, how they would behave in the short run. But and this is going to be the short run supply curve, okay? So we'll do some exercises, you'll see, where we actually get this by numbers, right? But always keep in your mind that whenever, bless you, whenever you need to write down the short run supply curve, there is always this 0 portion, okay? Where the firm is not producing, okay? It could be the case that if the fixed costs are, of course, 0, then it could, like, of course, then it might start from here, okay? You'll see. But other than that, it's going to look like this, okay? And that is the reason of an upward sloping supply curve, okay? Because we know that the profit maximizing point would be on the upward sloping portion of marginal cost, because the supply is now kind of equivalent to the marginal cost. That's why we have an upward sloping supply curve, as we learned in our introductory econ courses, okay? Like this. So we can put a check, okay? So let's give a break and then we'll continue in the second hour.